having a dilemma. In yesterday's class, I mentioned what was Arjuna's dilemma. What was the dilemma? Yes, Kshatriya Dharma. Yes, he came there ready to do his Kshatriya Dharma of fighting. But when he actually saw the battlefield, and he saw these are all members of my dynasty over here, and they are all going to be killed. So he started thinking, I have my duty to my Kula also. What is that? Well, I'll be most comfortable sitting down. You can remove this aside. I think, but I got the camera there. Just move, I don't need this here, no? So we have the Kula Dharma, and the Kula Dharma is don't fight. So no, I'm okay. So now when Arjuna is concerned, Arjuna's question itself determines the level of the discussion. So Arjuna could have asked, should I fight? He could have asked, what is my dharma? But instead the question that he asks is, what is dharma? It's a pruchhami tvam dharma sammudha chetaha. He's not asking pruchhami tvam mama dharma sammudha chetaha. So what is dharma? So basically Arjuna universalizes the question. And therefore Krishna answers at a very universal level. It's surprising that although a war is going to happen, when I go in the West and speak in the West, there is a very influential pro-Islam, anti-Hindu lobby in the West. Somehow there is a mysterious marriage between left and Islam. So the left supports Islam and a lot of Hindu phobia. So what happens is they say, oh, you say Islam is extremist, Hinduism is also extremist. Muslims have the Quran which talk about the jihad, and Hindus have the Bhagavad Gita which also talks about war. In fact, the Gita is worse than the Quran. Because at least in Quran, there is nobody who wants peace and they are instigated to war. The Bhagavad Gita, somebody wants peace, somebody makes very forceful arguments for peace. And his arguments are just dismissed. So I met one person, very intelligent person. He says, I read the Bhagavad Gita. No, I read the first chapter. I just fell in love with Arjuna. And as soon as I read the sixth chapter, I started hating Krishna. Because Arjuna is such a nice person and Krishna is such a nasty person. So now what happens is that Arjuna makes at one level very relatable arguments. Oh, our entire dynasty will be destroyed. We often dismiss the first chapter, but actually Arjuna makes very forceful arguments there. He says that, what is the use of getting a kingdom which is at the spoils of blood? So we say that, oh, he's just being selfish. But actually for most people he seems selfless. They may be motivated by greed, but I am not motivated by greed. So why should we do something like this? So the point is that generally specifics touch people's hearts. Universals don't. See, in life there are two things. There are specifics. So specifics means, for example, if we say specifics means if we say that, oh, recently there was this war and here there is a small boy who has become an orphan because his father was killed and his mother was slaughtered. And then that touches the heart. But if we make a general statement, war is terrible. Okay, that's true, and it's a true principle. But it doesn't touch the heart. So one of the challenges in the West when we are teaching the Bhagavad Gita, because most people don't read the Mahabharata. They just directly read the Bhagavad Gita as a sacred book. And they don't know what has happened in the Mahabharata, why this war is happening. So from their perspective, the arguments of Arjuna are specific and the answers of Krishna are very philosophical. So because of that, most devotees who do book distribution in the West, they tell people start reading the Bhagavad Gita from the second chapter. Now there are multiple reasons for that. First reason is of course that the names are remarkably tongue twisting for people. No, it's just like if you start reading one of the first things that if somebody's writing a novel or somebody's writing a book, he says that if somebody's making a movie, then he says that people should be able to relate with the characters, and the way you relate with the characters is by being able to relate with the names. So the first chapter itself is like you want to go to a temple and you want to before going to the temple, it's like you have to take a high jump of 10 feet. There's no staircase, there's no elevator. You have to just take a huge jump and drag yourself up. So the names themselves are forbidding. That itself is a big problem. Second is that this whole peace and violence, that's not the primary teaching of the Gita. But the first chapter talks all about peace. And then when Krishna talks about violence, it just doesn't, it just puts people on a very negative note. And of course, the third reason is that Prabhupada in his purport talks about women being less intelligent and can't be trusted. So that is a killer. And I know at least a dozen preachers who have told me that they were reading the Bhagavad Gita and not only stopped coming for programs, just returned the Bhagavad Gita back. And that is the best thing. Most people just burn the Bhagavad Gita straight because for them it's not a sacred book. It's just some book, some old book from some tradition. So women being less intelligent, that's bad enough. Women can't be trusted. The whole Western mood is men can't be trusted. Men are animals, men exploit. And women are victims of that. It's not that simple. Everybody exploits everyone in the multiple world. But so for various reasons, the first chapter, actually it's like we are put on the very wrong foot. It becomes very difficult. So most preachers start reading from the second chapter. And then it's relatively easier to relate with it. So the point I'm making here is the Gita starts with specifics, but Arjuna asks a universal question. And so when somebody says, I made various points, but I'll address these points one by one. So somebody says the Gita is a book more violent than the Quran. Well, I'm not going to talk about whether the Quran is violent or not. But if you say the Gita, nor if the purpose of Arjuna had been to get Krishna had been to get Arjuna to fight. Now, what is the easiest way to get someone to fight? Sorry? Provoke them. Yes, exactly. Now, how do you provoke someone? All the past negative things about? Exactly. So, if say B and C, you want B to attack C and you are A. So, what you do is C, you demonize C. Now, what a terrible person this C is. And then that angers B and then B will attack them. We want to incite or provoke B to attack C. So this is the normal way we would do things. And in the case of Krishna, he didn't have to demonize the Kauravas because they were already demons. They had already acted in terrible ways. And it's remarkable that not once in the entire Bhagavad Gita does Krishna mention even one of the reasons for the war from a circumstantial or a historical perspective. His purpose had to get to fight, just remind him, he dishonored your wife. Even an ordinary human being will get angry if somebody has dishonored their family. And Arjuna is a trained warrior, a peerless hero. So if food can be eaten like this, why does Krishna take it like this? Because Krishna's purpose is not to get Arjuna to fight. If you see, Krishna's purpose in the Gita, it is not to give circumstantial reasons for fighting. Or he doesn't do that. There are no circumstantial reasons for fighting given over there. What Krishna gives is universal principles for living and decision making. So essentially, Krishna's discourse is about dharma. It is not about yuddha. That the dharma at that particular point happens to be yuddha is simply circumstantial. So the Gita's primary focus is dharma. Dharmam samvadamavayo. Sanjay himself says this. This is not a yuddham samvada. This is a dharmam samvada. So, so basically, the point I'm making here is that the Gita, if it were a book of violence, book meant to incite violence, then why would its content not have the direct way to incite violence? It goes a remarkably indirect way. And on top of that, there have been many established commentators of the Bhagavad Gita. And we take the not just the Vaishnava Sampradaya, the Advaita Sampradaya. None of them have read the Gita to mean that, oh, India was under Islamic rule for so long. But which Gita commentator, Vishwanath Chakri Thakur, lived in Vrindavan soon after Aurangzeb had devastated Vrindavan. In fact, one of the reasons he came to Vrindavan from Bengal was to revive and re-establish what the Goswamis had established and what Aurangzeb had devastated. So, and yet, not one reference to any of the circumstantial events. Now, of course, during the Indian independence struggle, the Bhagavad Gita was appropriated or misappropriated. There are many Lokmanya Tilak and others. They said that, that the British colonial Raj is like the Kauravas. It is adharma. And the Indian National Congress is dharma. And dharma yuddha means the Indian National Congress should fight against the British Raj for gaining Indian independence. So the freedom struggle, they portrayed it as a dharma yuddha. Some of them did that, but that was not a very prominent strand. A few commentators talked about it, but what was more prominent was Gandhiji's interpretation of non-violence based on the Bhagavad Gita. So basically, what happens is that the point I'm making here is Krishna is not talking about the war and violence. His primary focus is how to determine the right thing to do. And what the Gita does is to answer ethical questions. Ethical dilemma is there. What is dharma here means the right thing to do. And for that, Krishna goes deeper to a philosophical analysis. So, ethical dilemma is what is right? And philosophical analysis is what is real? Philosophy, that is phili and sophos. Sophos is truth. Phili is love, of phili is love, like Philadelphia, as the city of brotherly love. Philadelphia is so brotherly love. That was the original meaning of that. Of course, it has one of the highest crime rates in America now. So there's not much brotherly love, unfortunately. But the point is that philosopher, so that is a lover of truth. Philosophy is the search for truth. So what the Gita does is, what is right? Krishna, to answer that, goes down to the question, what is real? What is real? You could put it in simpler terms as, what really matters? So Arjuna says that the kingdom doesn't really matter to me. I do not want to kill others to gain the kingdom. Okay, Krishna says the kingdom doesn't matter, but what really matters? So Krishna says we are going much deeper, below the soul. So below the body, below the circumstances, down to the spiritual level of identity. So Arjuna has basically, we all have various identities. We have functional identity that could be based on our family. No, we get a surname, we belong to a particular family. It could be based on our nation. It could be based on our job. It could be based on our gender. It could be based on our our income level, how much money we have. So like this. So I'm middle class, I'm upper middle class, I'm lower class, like that. So Krishna says, so for Arjuna, two functional identities are pulling him in two different directions. If I'm a Kshatriya, I should fight. If I'm a Kuru Vamshaj, I should not fight. So Krishna tells Arjuna that if you want to resolve this, you have to go below this to your fundamental identity. Your fundamental identity is that you are a soul. You are a spiritual being. So when Krishna speaks the Bhagavad Gita, he is not, so the ethical decision could be made based on circumstances. Say for example, this person attacked me and what they have done is bad, so I have to attack them back. And there is a fair enough reasoning. Ethical reasoning can be driven by circumstances. But ethical reasoning can also be driven by philosophical principles. And Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita is choosing the latter approach. So, ethical reasoning. Ethical reasoning means what is the right thing to do. That could be done based on circumstantial analysis. Okay, this person has done this, we should do this. It could also be done based on philosophical analysis. Now, it is not that the circumstantial analysis is wrong. If you can say the Mahabharata, the Gita comes in the Bhishma Parva. Before the Bhishma Parva is the Udyoga Parva. And in the Udyoga Parva, there is a lot of circumstantial analysis. What are the options for us if we don't fight? What will happen if we don't fight? So that kind of analysis is valid. It's not a circumstantial analysis to be rejected. But in the Gita, because Arjun does not ask a circumstantial question. Arjuna is not asking should I fight or not. He's asking what is dharma. So Udyog Parva has circumstantial analysis. But the Gita itself, the Bhishma Parva, within the Gita specifically, it has philosophical analysis. So now Krishna answers in the Gita at multiple levels. As I said, when Krishna starts speaking the Gita, his purpose is not so much to give an 18-chapter discourse. His purpose is simply to answer Arjun's question. So Arjun's question begins in 2.7. Prichhami tvam dharma sammoda chetaha. And in one sense you could say the entire Gita is an answer to Arjun's question. And the answer finally comes in 1866. Sarva dharman parityajya mam ekam sharanam vraja. So you have many dharmas. You have your kul dharma, you have kshatriya dharma, you have this dharma. But ultimately you have, based on your fundamental identity, on that you have a dharma. That is to me. That is, you serve me. Mam ekam sharanam vraja. And in that particular situation, Krishna tells Arjuna, you serve me by fighting. Because that is his plan. So now, even when Krishna says, Mam ekam sharanam vraja, so if you see at that time when Arjuna also responds, Arjuna is also still at the universal level. He does not say, I will fight. In response, he says, Karishye vachanam tava. So, even if you go to the 73rd verse thereafter, this whole discussion is at the universal level. And that's why, actually speaking, in the entire Bhagavad Gita, there are less than 10 references to fighting. Means once Krishna starts speaking. The only exception is the 11th chapter. Because in chapter 11, there is a vision being given. And there some reference to fighting comes up. But in terms of specifically telling Arjun to fight, Krishna, that's not the focus of the Gita at all. So the way the Gita does this analysis is, we cannot go into the full analysis of the Gita, but I'll focus on two main points to try to understand this. See, in the first chapter or the second chapter, when Krishna starts speaking, he answers based on Atma Gyan. First he says, see, Arjuna has two concerns. Mainly two concerns is that, so how can I kill them? That is the fate of those whom he cares for. And second is killing the right thing to do? They're similar, but they're two different things. How can I kill them? And is killing them the right thing for me to do? Now, we may say, aren't they the same thing? Well, maybe you could say they deserve to die, but is it for me to do it? You're getting these two different questions? It's not exactly the same question. So, let's put it this way: death and duty. So, is their death worth it? And is it my duty to kill them? So, the concern about death, Krishna addresses from 2.11 to 30 when he talks about Atma Gyan. He says that they are eternal. They are not going to die. In fact, they are going to get elevated. And then, after he talks about this, therefore, what should you do? Krishna talks at multiple levels. This Atma Gyan, he applies to talk about Karma Kanda. Even if you want to talk about Karma Kanda, then he talks about Karma Yoga. So, 231 to 38, he's talking about Karma Kanda, actually 37. And then Karma Yoga he talks about 238 to 53. Now, essentially, when Krishna speaks this, he's talking about, whether you want to think of Karma Yoga perspective, whether you want to think of going to Swarga, or whether you want to think of getting moksha. It is for you to fight. But Krishna eventually says that, actually, Krishna is comparing Karma Yoga and he's saying that is far better than Karma Kanda. But then, Arjun is having a particular frame of mind. See, Arjun is thinking, I have only two options: action or other way around. Renunciation or action. And Arjuna is thinking renunciation is better than action. But Krishna actually elaborates and just makes things. See, education has two parts. Sometimes it is making complicated things simple, and sometimes making simple things complicated. Both are education. Sometimes this is right, this is wrong. Well, actually it's not black and white. This person did such a terrible thing. How could they have done that? Well, not really. No, you are thinking they did this because of this, but have you considered all these factors? So education sometimes means making the simple complicated, or not making it complicated, revealing the complexity of what seems simple. And education also means show the complex in the simple. Those who think everything is very simple, they can often become very fanatical, very judgmental. This is a bad person, this is a good person. But education also requires the simple in the complex. So, in one sense, the entire Bhagavad Gita from 2.7 onwards till 1863 is Krishna revealing the complex in the simple. What you think is simple is not so simple. So let's try to understand. So I said these were Arjuna's options. That there is either I renounce or I act. Now Krishna tells him, you have not two but four options. He says that there is attached action, there is detached action, there is false renunciation, false or premature renunciation, and then there is real renunciation. So when Krishna is telling Arjuna that karma yoga is better than karma kand, essentially what he's saying is this is better than this. That's what he says in the second chapter. Durena yavaram karma. But Arjuna thinks that Krishna is saying this is better than this. And so this was Krishna's statement in 2.49. Durena yavaram karma buddhi yoga dhananjaya. Does this seem like V or does it seem like greater than? Okay. How do I make it greater than? Just write it down. It's meant to be greater than. So, but Arjuna thinks that Krishna is saying that fight is do avaram karma is fighting. So he says, why do you want me to fight? Better I renounce. So then Krishna has to analyze. Then in the third chapter, he starts saying that now I am going to talk about two levels. See, how does Krishna answer Arjuna's question? 3.3. He says, Lokesmin vividha nishtha pura prokta mayanaga. There are two levels. And basically he's talking about there's a level of action and there's a level of renunciation. And then he analyzes them further. So for example, when he says karmendriyani sanyamya yasate manasa smaran. So that when somebody contemplates sense objects internally while renouncing the externally. So what is he talking about? False renunciation. So 3.6 for example. And then when he's talking about, for example, karmanaiva hi samsiddhim astita janakadaya. That the great kings like Janak attained perfection just by doing their duty. That what is he talking over there at? Detached action. That is 3.20. So basically, among these, which are the things that Krishna disapproves? False renunciation, definitely disapproves that. No doubt about it. Attached action, also, okay, Krishna says, even if you act at that level, still you should do your duty. Because then the whole section 3.9 to 16 is, if you have to do karma kanda, you have to understand that you have to participate in the universe. So Krishna doesn't recommend that, but Krishna tells that this is what it is. And then, now real renunciation, Krishna doesn't directly talk about it at this stage. So overall, Krishna does not start off, say when they're having a discussion, he doesn't start off saying that, okay, thinking that I have to explain karma yoga and jnana yoga and bhakti yoga to Arjuna. I said, it's not a formal structured class with a course material and a course and a lesson plan and all that. It's not that these are the terms that I am going to explain to Arjuna. It's a natural discussion, and in the course of that discussion, various options come up. So now, as I said, right now, I'm in the process of making the simple very complicated. And then I'll make the complicated simple. So if we consider there's four levels: real renunciation, detached action, and attached action. So attached action is associated with karma kand. Real renunciation is associated with jnana yoga and dhyan yoga. And detached action is associated with bhakti yoga and karma yoga. So now Krishna presents these various paths in the context of pursuing the circumstantial need. The circumstantial situation is Arjuna wants to decide whether I should fight or not. So what Krishna will do is Krishna will address that question from various perspectives. So basically, have any of you heard of this word bullseye? You know, hit the bullseye. And it's like such a brutal analogy, you know. It is detached action. Okay. No. See, okay, that's a good question. See, renunciation means the way Krishna is talking about it is you renounce the world and go to a forest and follow the path of renunciation. Bhakti Yoga, as Krishna describes in the Bhagavad Gita, is a path of engaged spirituality. Even when Krishna says you're doing bhakti, see, renunciation basically means that in the context of the Bhagavad Gita. See, there are two different things over here. When we use the word real renunciation, false renunciation, we talk about Phalgu Vairagya and Yukta Vairagya, but that is very different. See, that is here. The standard question comes. If I am here and say here, I'll come to that. The sense objects, and here there is say Krishna. So when we talk in the bhakti context of Yukta Vairagya and Phalgu Vairagya, so Bhoga is I use the sense object for myself. Tyaga is I just renounce the sense, reject the object. But bhakti is I use the object. So this is bhakti and this is Yukta Vairagya. And this is Phalgu Vairagya. So when we are considering the relationship of the sense object with Krishna, when Yukta Vairagya and Phalgu Vairagya have been talked about, they are talked about in primarily the relationship of the sense object with Krishna. Do I see that the sense object can be used in Krishna's service, or do I see that I don't see any potential for using it in Krishna's service? Now, when the Gita is talking about Arjuna's situation, there the situation is slightly different. You say Arjuna is here, and then for him his karma bhumi, his action bhumi is the battlefield. So, should Arjuna act in the battlefield, or should Arjuna leave the battlefield? So, in the Gita's context, renunciation is from this perspective. So, what you said rightly, that should he do his duty or should he not do his duty? So, it's in terms of the way we interact, whether we engage with the sense object or not at all. So, now, yeah. So now the way Krishna, let me come to a couple of points. I lose my flow of thought. So the point I was making is Krishna is not going out there to specifically analyze various parts. He's addressing Arjuna's need. And while addressing Arjuna's need, he analyzes various parts. I'll explain the difference. Say if a patient comes to a doctor, the patient has some medical knowledge and the patient has some questions that, okay, should I do natural therapy or chemotherapy or Ayurveda or this or that? Now, at that time, the doctor will analyze those parts. But that is not for the purpose of making that the doctor is not specifically giving a discourse on Ayurveda or naturopathy or allopathy or chemotherapy or anything like that. The doctor's purpose is to treat the patient and to guide the patient to make a wise choice. So the doctor, when he speaks to a patient, the focus is not various therapies. The focus is, that's not the focus. Focus is basically relevant treatment. So similarly, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna's primary purpose is not to elaborately analyze any of these parts or even describe those parts. Like many times people ask, you say you follow the Bhagavad Gita, but you chant 16 rounds. Where does the Bhagavad Gita talk about chanting? You know, 16 rounds, where does it talk even about chanting? You can say Satatam Kirtayanto Mam, Yajnanam Japa Yajnasmi. But Yajnanam Japa Yajnasmi is one among 80 items of Krishna's vibhutis. Satatam Kirtayanto Mam, Kirtan can be many things. It's not that it is not there, but it's certainly not an emphasis of the Gita. Deity worship. Madhyaji, we can say it is there. But beyond that, there's not much description. Why? Because Krishna and Arjuna, they lived in a culture where Arjuna already knew about if I am to practice Bhakti Yoga, how to practice it. So Krishna does not have to explain to Arjuna how to practice Bhakti Yoga. Krishna's purpose is what to practice. It's like the patient knows, okay, if I have to take allopathy, I'll have to do this. If I have to take naturopathy, I have to do that. So the purpose over there is not to describe what naturopathy and allopathy involve. It's which path to follow. And while describing which path to follow, some details of the path may be described which are relevant for choosing. So the point I was making is here, I was talking about this word bullseye. So it's a brutal metaphor. Now, bull, why do you want to hit it? And the eye is the most vulnerable part. Hit the bullseye. So I just use the word target. I don't use the word bullseye nowadays. But suppose the expert archer or expert shooter, they can hit the target. And that itself is a sign of expertise. But suppose somebody is really expert, they can hit the target not just from the front, but from the side also. And not just from one side, but from another side also. And not just from this side, but from multiple sides, they can hit the same target. So that would signify really great expertise. So from the perspective of the Bhagavad Gita, there is an elaborate philosophical analysis. But in the context, Krishna wants to establish dharma, and for establishing dharma, Krishna wants Arjuna to fight. So what Krishna does in the Bhagavad Gita is, Krishna tells Arjuna, if you want to follow karma kanda, you should fight. If you want to follow karma yoga, you should fight. If you want to follow dhyan yoga, you should fight. If you want to follow jnana yoga, you should fight. If you want to follow bhakti yoga, you should fight. So I'll talk about that. Essentially, Krishna analyzes these various paths in such a way that he says, you should fight. We know karma kanda says you have to participate in the cosmic duty, cosmic cycle. You have to participate in that. Karma yoga, of course, you have to do your duty. Now, what Krishna does in dhyana yoga is, Krishna makes it very clear that yes, dhyana yoga and jnana yoga involve renunciation, but renunciation requires that one come to a particular level before one renounces. And before one comes to that level, one has to act in the world. So the way Krishna analyzes it, if you remember the 6th chapter, Krishna talks about 2 levels of the on the path of Ashtanga Yoga. Arurukshor Munir Yogam, Karma Karanam Uchyate. Yoga Arudasaiva, Shamaha Karanam Uchyate. Aruruksha is the beginner stage. Arudha is the advanced stage. And when Krishna says, when you come to this level, you can renounce. At this level, you act with detachment. This is the yoga. Specifically, he's talking about yoga, but dhyan yoga. So now, Krishna, when describing the Arudha stage, he says that Suhrun Mitrarya Udasina. See everyone equally. And if you see what Arjuna objects to, here 6.9 Arjuna says, see everyone equally. And Krishna repeats that in 632. Sarva bhutastham atmanam. No. What is 632? Sarva bhutastham yomam bhajatyekatvam astita. Sarvatha vartamanopi sayogi mai vartate. So equal vision towards all. And that is precisely Arjuna's objection. See, if we just see 6.34, Chanchalami Mana Krishna. If we take that verse literally, we say Arjuna seems to be like a nutcase. The mind is wild and ruthless, restless and uncontrolled and mad. If somebody says my mind is like that, you say maybe you have to go to mental hospital. I don't want to be near you. And Arjuna has not acted any time like a mentally unstable person. He's always been a very level-headed person. Hmm. But specifically, when Arjuna is saying six Chanchalam Mana Krishna, you see that in the previous verse context. What is that? Yoyam yogas tvaya prokta samyena madhusudana etasyaham na pashyami chanchalatvat stiram. That samyena, seeing everyone equally, is not possible for me. So he's saying there's no way I can see the virtuous Yudhishthir and the vicious Duryodhana equally. And Krishna tells him that if you can't see them equally, that means you're not ready to renounce the world. So Arjun, normally when we talk about how difficult the path of yoga is, we say you have to go to jungle and meditate in isolation and all that, and that's difficult. No, that is not difficult for Arjun. Arjuna has already done that. In the forest when Arjuna was there, he did tapasya, yogi austerity to satisfy the devatas and get astras from them, from Indra, from Shiva. He got so that physical aspect of yoga is not difficult for Arjuna. It is the mental aspect of yoga that see everyone equally. So what Krishna tells Arjuna is, even if you want to practice Ashtanga yoga, to come to the level of practicing Ashtanga yoga, before that you have to practice act in the world. So in that way, Krishna talks about it. And then Dhyan Yoga, then this is Dhyan Yoga. Gyan Yoga, Krishna talks about it in the 18th chapter. And he says that Swakarmanatam Abhyarcha Siddhim Vindati Manav. He says that you can actually need, before you come to the level where you can renounce the world for practicing Gyan Yoga, you have to act in the world. So in one sense, the way Krishna analyzes in the Gita is that if you see, generally we say the Gita has 3 sections. So the first 6 chapters, chapter 1 to 6 is basically Karma Yoga through Dhyan Yoga to Bhakti Yoga. Yoginam api sarvesham is Bhakti Yoga. So chapters 2 to 5 is Karma Yoga. Chapter 6 is Dhyan Yoga. And then it culminates in Bhakti Yoga. Mm-hmm. And then Arjuna has said that actually fixing the mind is very difficult. Krishna then says, okay, I'll give you an alternative way to do it. The middle 6 chapters is a direct focus on Bhakti Yoga. The last 6 chapters, middle 6 chapters is 7 to 12, is a direct focus on Bhakti Yoga. The last 6 chapters, 13 to 18, is actually Jnana Yoga to Bhakti Yoga. So now Krishna at one level is concerned that Arjuna should fight. There is, when we want to get somebody to do something, first get them to do the right thing and then get them to do the right thing with the right motivation. Like first it is, in Bhakti also, first it is Yena Kena Prakarena Mana Krishna Niveshana. Then it is Anya Bilashita Shunya. Initially, even if you want something from Krishna, meditate on Krishna. Then eventually, you come to Anya Bilashita without seeking anything from Krishna. It's a gradual level like that. So, Krishna goes by this systematic process. So, I talk about education means 2 parts to it. One is you take the simple and reveal the complexity within the simple. And sometimes the complexity can become very overwhelming. So, that's what happens to Arjun at 1863. And he says that Vimrishaita dasheshena yatechasi tatha kuru. Now you deliberate and do as you desire. So it's like, suppose there's a serious discussion going on between a patient and a doctor. Okay, this treatment has this issue, this treatment can be done like this treatment can be done like this. Then suddenly doctor, now you decide what you want to do. Okay, I have to decide. How do I decide? So Chakravarti Bad explains that Arjuna becomes very sober, pensive at that time. Because in one sense, when we are reading the Bhagavad Gita, we know that the Bhagavad Gita is coming to an end. So if you are watching a 3 hour movie and it's 2 hour 45 minutes हो गया, so now we understand climax आने वाला है, कुछ तो होना चाहिए. We understand that. But Arjun doesn't know in advance that it's a 80 chapter discussion, it's about to get over. It's a deep discussion going on, and suddenly, now you do as you desire. So Arjun starts thinking, Krishna spoke this there, and he spoke in the 3rd chapter, he spoke that in the 7th chapter, he spoke that in the 10th chapter. Of course, I don't think 3rd, 7th, 10th chapters, because those chapters are not there. But so Arjun becomes very burdened. And then if two people are very close to each other, then what happens is they can convey a lot through just their eyes. That they don't have to speak also. So Krishna sees Arjun and he says that, okay, you're telling me to decide what I should do, but I want to know, what do you want me to do? Like if a patient, doctor says, now you do what you want to do. Now you do, suppose a patient is there or a child is sick and the child's parents are asking the doctor. They're discussing this treatment, this treatment. So the parents ask, if this had been your child, what would you do? That's a very different question. And more like an objective analysis of various parts and then more a personal recommendation. So Arjun's mood at that time is like that. He says, oh, Krishna, what do you want me to do? And that's where Krishna's mood also changes. So in 1863, Krishna's mood is more of that of a dispassionate educator. Now, my purpose is to educate you. This is an option, this is one option, this is one option. Now you decide what you want to do. But when Arjun's mood is, now what do you want me to do? Or what would you do in my situation? Something like that. What do you want me to do? And Krishna's mood changes. And then 1864 to 66, Krishna actually becomes almost the opposite. He's an impassioned lover. He's like a doctor telling, I'm not going to cheat you. I care for you. I will tell you the truth. This is what you should do. So 1864 is the most emotion-filled verse of the Bhagavad Gita. Sarva guhyatamam bhuyah shruну me paramam vachah ishtosi me dudhamiti tato vakshami te hitam. So generally, when somebody speaks, there is a there are certain intensifiers. This is very good. Like we ask somebody, should you do this? Should I do this? Yeah, that's good. Oh, that's very good. So very good is an intensifier. So like that in 1864, actually there are 6 intensifiers. So Sarva Guhyatamam, it's the most confidential knowledge that I have spoken many things, but this is the most this is the most confidential thing that I want to speak to you. And second is Bhuyaha. Yeah. I'm not annoyed with you that you forgot what I said or you didn't realize the emphasis. I'm going to speak it to you again. And then Bhuyaha is very significant. Okay, there is a special significance of that Bhuya, which I'll talk about next. And then Shrunume Paramam Vacha. Sometimes something may be private, the confidential. Bhuya, it can be translated in multiple ways. One is secret and the other is private. The two are not exactly the same. Say like, so there is a get together at home and the family is talking with different guests. Maybe the wife comes to the husband. Can you talk with you privately for a moment? Now that private means it is not other people's business. It's not secret, but it's private. So secret means no one should know. Private means only the concerned people should know. So Guhya is more actually in the sense of private. So it's like the doctor is saying, this is my private recommendation. It's more like a general analysis I have given you, but now Guhya actually. Now a child may say, Mom, I want to talk privately with you. And the child and the mother may be busy and I want to talk privately with you. The child says, oh, my toy broke.
here. This is not a very important thing. We'll talk about later. So the private may not always be very important. But Krishna says, Paramam Vachaha. This is not only Guhya, Sarva Guhya Tama, it's also the most important words of mine. Shrume Paramam Vachaha. Ishto Sime Dridhamiti. You are Ishto. You are dear to me. And not only are you dear to me, when you say Dridham, that means I am determined to take care of you. I am dedicated to your well-being. Earlier in 914, Krishna has used the word Dridham. Where did he use it? Yeah, Satatam Kirtayanto Mam Yatantascha Dridhavrataha. So Krishna is saying, I expect my devotees to be determined, but I don't do anything less. I am dedicated, I am determined to take care of you. He's like dedicated to your care. Like a doctor telling, I am here for you. I care for you. Sometimes I care for you, but I have no time for you. No, not like that. I care for you and I am here for you. So each time I care for you and I am here for you. And then Tato Vakshami Te Hitam. I'm speaking it only for your benefit. And when he speaks this is where Krishna is telling, like, I am speaking from my heart for your life. And then when he says Bhuyaha, what is it like? Again, I am speaking it. So we know 1865 is in many ways a repetition of 934. Manmana Bhamad Bhakto, that comes. But there is a significant difference between the two. If you see, suppose somebody wants to, suppose a doctor, consider the medical metaphor itself. Say the doctor is treating the patient, but the doctor is not really sure of the commitment of the patient. Doctor says, you take this treatment, you will be cured. You will be cured if you take this treatment and if you avoid this diet and if you do this exercise and you follow this regimen. So the emphasis is on the patient's responsibility. Like that, in Manmanabho Madbhakto Madhyaji Mam Namaskuru, Mam Evaishyasi. Till 2.5 verses, it's the contract. If you do this, you'll get this. So first 2.5 lines are similar. But the last, Mam Evaishyasi, Yuktavaivam Atmanam Matparayana. In 934, Krishna is emphasizing your responsibility. That if you in this way dedicate yourself to me, then you will come to me. It's like the patient's responsibility. If you do this, my promise holds. But my promise holds if you do your part. But suppose a doctor really cares for the patient and the doctor wants the patient to take the treatment. And the doctor's emphasis will be, if you just do this, I guarantee you will be cured. So like that, in 1865, Krishna's mood is Mam Evaishasi Satyam Te Pratigane Priyosime. There his mood is your mood is Arjuna's responsibility. But here Krishna is emphasizing my responsibility. Krishna's responsibility. I guarantee you, I will take care of you. So it is more like doctor's assurance. So here, what is happening is, as the Gita is coming over, Krishna's heart is overflowing with love. And he wants to make sure that Arjun does the right thing. And that is where the last verse comes in. Sarva dharman parityajya mam ekam sharanam vraja. So, this is where 1866 is education second part. Making the complex simple. So make the complex simple. That, oh, I talk about various dharmas. I talk about karma yoga and jnana yoga, and from this perspective, what is dharma? From that perspective, what is dharma? I talk about all of that. But just do this, and I will take care of everything. Like the doctor telling the patient, no, I talk about various therapies, but just forget it all. Just take this treatment, you will be cured. So this, again, is like a personal assurance of Krishna. So the Gita concludes with Krishna not being a dispassionate teacher, but an impassioned lover. Krishna is filled with love for Arjuna. And with that loving concern, he gives us assurance. Mam ekam sharanam vrajati. So, when Srila Prabhupada wrote his Bhagavad Gita as it is, nowadays online there is a lot of criticism of Prabhupada's Gita. And one can say that even when Krishna is talking about Karma Yoga, Prabhupada is talking about Bhakti Yoga. And we say Prabhupada is doing only a Bhakti centered explanation. And yes, we agree with that. There's no denying that. But is Prabhupada, what is he doing in the Gita? And Prabhupada says Bhagavad Gita as it is. Prabhupada is very clear. He says in the introduction, our purpose is the same as the purpose when Krishna came to this world, thousands of years ago. So, in one sense, the Gita, through its elaborate flow of thought, goes towards Bhagavad Gita as the conclusion. So, what Prabhupada's Gita is doing is giving the Bhakti Yoga as the conclusion throughout. So, what Krishna gives at the end, Prabhupada gives throughout. And if Prabhupada's intention had been to like impose his own version on the Gita, then Prabhupada could have just avoided giving the Sanskrit. Prabhupada could have just given his own translation and own purpose. So Prabhupada uses the Sanskrit, and not the Sanskrit in Devanagari, Sanskrit in transliteration also, and word for word translation also. So Prabhupada is forcing us to think. The Sanskrit word is Karma Yoga, and Prabhupada is saying it as Bhakti Yoga. So if Prabhupada just wanted to teach Bhakti, Prabhupada would have just avoided the Sanskrit entirely. But Prabhupada wants us to understand. Prabhupada's mood was, at one level, he said that if people read even one page, they should get the essential message. So what Prabhupada is doing is, it is compassion. It is not his fanaticism. It is not that he wants to be Bhakti everywhere. Since Prabhupada wants to make sure that in the intricate flow of the Gita, people don't get lost and they miss out on the conclusion. So, Prabhupada's approach in the Gita, it is not Bhakti fanaticism. Not at all. It is compassion. He wants to make sure that the conclusion is clearly available for everyone. And is Prabhupada not aware of the Gita's technical flow? Very much aware. Especially if you look at the first and the last verses of each chapter. Then you will see Prabhupada talks a lot about the technical flow of the chapter. So for example, the second chapter towards the end and the third chapter in the beginning, Prabhupada says, in this chapter, Karma Yoga has been talked about and a hint of Bhakti Yoga has been given. Now that hint of Bhakti Yoga is 2.61b. Tani sarvani sanyamya yuktasita matpara. But now Krishna is giving a hint of the Bhakti Yoga, and Prabhupada is mentioning that. But Prabhupada is not just giving a hint. Prabhupada is giving a broad picture of Bhakti Yoga in his purpose. Savai mana Krishna padara vindayor vacham svaikunta gunan varanam. So Prabhupada is consciously adopting a particular strategy. And when Prabhupada was asked that which book you want to translate in the future, Prabhupada, one of the books was Bhagavad Gita. So Prabhupada, if he had more time, he could have gone into the technical flow of the Gita also. But what Prabhupada is emphasized is the emphasis of the heart of Krishna. So the simple can be made complicated, the complicated can be made simple. Prabhupada, based on his audience and his time, focuses on making the complicated that way, Prabhupada is fulfilling the purpose of Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. And that is his, both his devotion and his compassion. So I'll summarize what we discussed today. I started by talking about first the Gita's purpose. The Gita is not a book of violence at all. Why? Because it is not talking anything about the circumstantial reasons at all. It is talking about universal principles. Universal principles for living. That is, it talks about dharma. And when Krishna answers Arjuna's question, Krishna's purpose is not to give an elaborate discourse on various parts. Krishna's purpose is simply to guide Arjuna. And while guiding Arjuna, when Krishna finds that Arjuna is not getting what he's saying, then Krishna elaborates. So at one level, education means to make the simple complicated. So renunciation or action, Krishna says there are four levels. There is real renunciation, false renunciation, detached action, and balance. And in these are associated various paths. Like that, incidentally, Krishna talks about various paths. There is Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, and there is Jnana Yoga, Dhyana Yoga. And then, through all this simple and Krishna makes it complicated, what Krishna is doing is, from various paths, he's pointing to Bhakti Yoga. Or rather, not from Bhakti Yoga, he's pointing to how Arjuna should fight. Whichever path he follows, whether it's Karma Kanda or whether it is Bhakti Yoga. And finally, what Krishna does is, all this is, you could say, making the simple is being made complex. Or rather, the complexity underlying the simple is being reduced. And then finally, in the conclusion of the Gita, he shows the significance that Krishna's mood changes. So Krishna changes from a simple educator, dispassionate educator, to an impassioned lover. And this is where he makes the complex categorically simple. And this is what the Prabhupada is doing in Bhagavad Gita. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Any questions or comments? Yes, please. Yeah, now is the conclusion, those who have read the Mahabharata, do they say that the conclusion of the Bhagavad Gita is Karma Yoga? I don't think, I don't know whom you're talking about, but what they say, and what I know is that Karma Yoga should not be de-emphasized or devalued. See, the Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition emerged at a particular time in history. You see, that it's like almost at that time, you see, the Islamic devastation was happening in India. That was the time of Bengal. But if you see Chaitanya Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitam, they're saying, oh, the time was so dedicated, so time was so degraded that people were worshipping only the goddess and not worshipping Krishna. That people would go in the Ganga at the time of eclipse, but only at that time they would chant the holy name. Today, people would read the Bhagavatam, but they would not talk about bhakti. But today, if somebody reads the Bhagavatam, is a very special person, isn't it? So what is happening is, in one sense, the Gaudiya tradition focus has been primarily to take people from Sattva to Siddha. that's why the Sandarbhas, G. Goswami spent a lot of time differentiating between Krishna and Vishnu. In today's world, how important is the difference among people? Even the existence of God, people accept that will be a big step forward. So every tradition has some core principles that are central. But the specific emphasis can vary. So now, if you see, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did dramatically flood the world with bhakti. But he did not do much of political response. When Krishna came in the Bhagavad Gita, the whole purpose of avatar, at least in that perspective, Dharma Samstapanartha, is to bring about political change. So this political change means this person is ruling, we have to establish this person as a ruler. So we could say that different times there are different emphasis. Ultimately, the purpose of all avatars is to raise people towards God consciousness, Krishna consciousness, divine consciousness. But this emphasis may be different. So in the moment today, if you look at the way our movement started, it was largely monastic. To join ISKCON means to become a Brahmachari. That was what it meant basically. And now we have come to the next generation where more than 95% of our devotees are not Brahmachari. But still, what happens is we expect Brahmachari standards even from Grihasthas. That means, not we do, that is the general understanding. Who is a serious Grihastha? Who comes every day for the full morning program? Who does this. Basically, you're a Grihastha in name only, you're a Brahmachari in every other. And that is glorified. By that definition, the one devotee was talking to me, he said, if Prabhupada had come to today's ISKCON, Prabhupada would have been disrespected as a not a serious devotee. How often do you come to the temple? How often do you come to the morning program? So, for Grihasthas, there has to be a certain space. We also have to be serious in bhakti. And we are serious in bhakti, but we cannot impose monastic standards on them. And that happens, it can be very damaging. We've almost lost the entire first generation of devotees' children. 99% of the Prabhupada disabled children have not become devotees. So why is that? Because the Grihasthas are expected to live like Brahmachari or Sannyasi, and then they had no time for the children. Prabhupada didn't approve of that. And the temple leaders told the devotees, told the young mothers also, go out and distribute books. And they just gave all the children to somebody to take care of. Prabhupada, you should be taking care of your child. This is the later. But that was not emphasized somehow. So my understanding is, when Karma Yoga is being emphasized, it is that the monastic standards of bhakti should not be applied for Grihasthas. Yeah, contextual. No, Grihasthas should also be trained to see that taking care of their family is also bhakti. That is not the only way to practice bhakti. But taking care of the children, taking care of the family is also your service to Krishna. So, now whether I want to call it Karma Yoga or not, that's a whole technical discussion. But the engaging in the world in a responsible way is also important for a devotee. The success of a devotee is not just in how much they renounce the world and practice direct bhakti. If somebody is practicing direct bhakti, that is to say, George Harrison, what happened was a catastrophe, basically. He met Prabhupada. Prabhupada told him that whatever, write songs about Krishna. And he started writing songs about Krishna. And basically, Madison Square Avenue is the biggest performing venue for artists in the entire world, in America. So he was Madison Square Avenue. So he was performing there, and and because he had become a devotee, he didn't really care much for the appeal of the music. And then in the middle of the thousands of people assembled for him to hear music, he chant Hare Krishna. He got everyone to chant Hare Krishna. And people on the stage started throwing bottles and stuff at him. And all the newspaper reviews were, George Harrison has such great musical talent, but he got involved in this Hare Krishna cult, and the world has lost such a terrible talent. So to understand what it was like, suppose now the World Cup is happening, and say maybe the India's top player, whoever is Virat Kohli or whoever, that person becomes a devotee, and say he's the captain also. And India is expected to win the World Cup. India doesn't even make it to the knockout. They knock it out before we get to the knockout stage. And then a terrible performance, and after that, there's a post-match interview. What happened? Why did you lose? All this win loss is all temporary, it's illusory. This is chant Hare Krishna again. You cannot imagine anything that would be a more damaging anti-preaching. So the point is, if we are engaging in the world, so that when George Harrison met Prabhupada, and then he told Prabhupada, for every one person that I'm bringing toward Krishna, I seem to be pushing 100 people away from Krishna. What should I do? And then Prabhupada said that, use your intelligence. Use your intelligence. And after that, he started writing normal songs. Sometimes a little bit Krishna he would bring in. Sometimes he would go to devotional songs. And then, like, if you read the news story, New York Times at that time says, oh, George Harrison has been saved from the Hare Krishna cult. It was a phase that he went through and he came out of the phase. And that's how his talent was taken. So, we can do a lot of damage if we are in the world and are not being responsible with it. So my understanding is that's what is the emphasis. It's not so much karma yoga, it's that bhakti should not be used to neglect the responsibilities that we have in the world. If we are in responsibility. Any other question? Okay, so I talked about how Prabhupada also said I invented the Krishna consciousness in practically. So in trying to invent things, we might just go away from Prabhupada's mood, or how can we ensure that we are also following Prabhupada properly? So yeah, it's a very important question. I would say it's by far the single most important question for our moment right now. And it's important to understand that deviation, if you consider this is the moment. The moment is connected with the past, so there's our tradition. And then we exist in the contemporary world. The moment needs to be connected with the past, and this is our base belief. But the moment also needs to connect with the contemporary world. for example, in the pandemic, and the whole world had locked down, if we had said we'll only be faithful. Faithful means satsang means physical satsang. No shastric reference for anyone giving any class on Zoom. So we cannot have any class on Zoom. So if we had been only faithful, there is no precedent at all in the acharyas of any kind of virtual science. So we would have to shut down our movement. If we were resourceful, were we not faithful? Yeah, the means specifically we assume may not have been used before. But the purpose that was being pursued was being pursued. We're not saying that virtual sangha is the exact same as physical sangha, not necessarily. But can virtual sangha do something? Have some good impact? Definitely it can. How much? That varies. So, if there is only faithfulness without resourcefulness, basically if you consider a living tradition, if it has only connection with the past and no connection with the present, it will just become a museum exhibit. Oh, like a museum exhibit. In the past, this culture was there and these people were there and they used to do like this. Maybe no one living to practice. But if you focus only on the present, then we will simply become a cultural fad. There are so many people doing something. Some people dress in this way and some people do that way and some people do that thing. We'll have no spiritual authenticity. So we need a balance of both being faithful, which connects us with the past, and we have to be resourceful to connect with the present. So now, how do we do this? Well, it depends. It depends on time, place, and circumstance. So when the Journey Home book had come about, Maharaj had given me that book before it was published to read, and I had already written some books. So Maharaj said, "What do you think about this? To tell me." So I said to Maharaj, the stories were adventurous, but I just love the tone of them. But here you're not speaking like an acharya speaking, or you're not speaking like a guru speaking to disciples. You're speaking like a speaker sharing your experiences with your friends. Yes, that is the tone you need for contemporary outreach. So I said, India is also, for Western outreach, right? India is also becoming westernized. If you can adopt that tone, then you can reach a lot of people. So that was that, you could say that 2004, I was the start of my retraining. In 1996, I was trained in a particular way to understand Krishna consciousness. In 2004, my retraining started because of Maharaj's inspiration and Maharaj's guidance. So I would say that ultimately we have to develop love for people. We have to inspire people to develop love. But the specifics of how you do it, whether you speak in a vertical top-down with authority speaking to a subordinate, or a friend speaking to a friend. The ultimate point is there inspiration to practice bhakti being transmitted? So the purpose remains the same, but the means can vary. When Prabhupada talks about realize these things, essentially Prabhupada is saying the same thing: be faithful and resourceful. Prabhupada says that realization has two parts. One is no unscrupulous movement needs to be taken out. That means that it's not that we take something which this text is not saying it. But at the same time, it has to be made interesting to the audience. So, interesting to the audience. So, how do we do that? That is the expertise of the teacher. So, for example, you could say this is the vast wisdom of Scripture. This is the contemporary interest. Scripture and contemporary interest. So, we have to find out where these two intersect. And understanding this and focusing on this we are not drawing something which is not there in scripture. It is there in scripture, but we are finding out which aspect of scripture will be interesting to the audience. So if we do both, then that will make it really effective. So our whole youth outreach, the specifics idea of how youth outreach was done, there are some statements of Prabhupada, no doubt there. But the specifics of having a say short and morning program or having a center where we don't really have people, all this, Prabhupada is actually established. But that is what is interesting, listen, that is what is doable, that is what is practical for the students. And then we have enormous experience. So every devotee is successful. They have to be resourceful. And how do we ensure that we are both faithful and resourceful? My understanding is we have to learn to hear. Hear devotee and hear new people. Hear new people is not that we have to go and attend seminars for new people. When we are speaking to the audience, after the audience, after the talk, we hear them. Which point resonates with them? Which point doesn't resonate with them? Which point agitates them? And if it agitates them, sometimes some points are central. And then we may have to speak them even if they are agitated. At some points they are not very central. So we don't have to speak them. So when we have that learning, what I have personally found is the most important thing for a good preacher, I don't like the word preacher also, good teacher, good outreacher, preaching has a very holier than thou attitude, that connotation. I am high up and I am going to tell you what to do. I was in Texas, and there, Texas is a part of the Bible Belt. We think of America as materialistic, but in the entire Western world, America is the most religious country, far more than Europe, far than UK or France or Australia, New Zealand. The southern part of America is quite religious, evangelical Christians. They're quite pushy. So there I saw in one car bumper sticker was there. Oh God, please save me from your preachings. Yeah. So normally God saves you through your preachers, but the preachers are so irritating, so domineering, so judgmental. Oh God, I don't want anything to do with them. So during Prabhupada's time, the word preach had a very normal connotation. Was it no negative connotation? Like Prabhupada also uses the word the cult of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is spreading all over the world. Like today we say, oh, we go to IIT Kharagpur. We are coming here to spread the cult of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Get out! That's what it is. You will not use the word cult because it has a negative connotation. So preach has acquired a negative connotation. But whatever. My understanding is that if we want to preach effectively, we want to be good outreachers, good teachers, we have to keep learning from other devotees from their experiences and learning from our audience. What resonates with them, what does not resonate with them. And then we can be both faithful and resourceful. I think we have to stop now. It's a long time. Thank you very much. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki, Gaur I consider now my visit to be successful. It's wonderful being here. All of you have risen to a formidable challenge with having the opportunity to start a new project and take it forward. It is I've traveled across the world. I feel that this place, Newtown area, has enormous potential, and whatever be the specific trajectory by which you came here, the trajectory from here looks very auspicious, looks very bright for me, and I offer best wishes and prayers to all of you that you can both savor Krishna consciousness internally and share Krishna consciousness. Savoring and sharing. That's what life of right. That's what the essence of our life is. We get the taste and we try to share the taste with others. Best wishes and prayers to all of you for the wonderful service that you're already doing and the even more wonderful service that you'll do in the future. Hooray!